Some folks on the frontier learned it early, that strength did not always come wearing broad shoulders and a loud voice. Sometimes it came in a patched calico dress, with blistered palms hidden beneath clean white cuffs. Sometimes it spoke so softly, a man had to quiet his own pride just to hear it. And sometimes the person who looked most in need of saving was the one heaven had sent to hold a broken home together. In the fall of 1882, high in Idaho mountain country, Martha Granger stood beside the Ashford Ranch woodpile with rain running from the brim of her black bonnet, and both hands locked around the handle of a split maul too heavy for her wrists. The yard lay gray and mean around her, barn doors hanging crooked, hens huddled under a wagon, a water pump squeaking in the wind, and the big ranch house standing at the end of the muddy track with half its shutters loose. Adam Ashford was coming toward her from the corral, limping slightly from an old injury he tried to hide, his coat dark with rain and his jaw set hard enough to cut timber. "You'll hurt yourself," he said. Martha lifted the maul again. Her arms trembled before she brought it down. The blade glanced off the wet round and sank into mud. She did not look at him when she whispered, "I am stronger than I look." The words were nearly lost beneath the rain on the barn roof, but Adam heard them. He had heard weaker words shouted from stronger mouths. A gust pushed loose hair against Martha's cheek. She was too thin, he noticed first. Not sickly, exactly, but worn down the way a good shirt wore thin at the elbows after too many seasons of honest work. Her dress had been mended at the hem with thread, a shade too dark. Her gloves were darned across the palms. At her feet sat one brown traveling trunk with a cracked brass latch, a folded shawl tied around the handle, and an old tin lunch pail dented in at one corner. Adam looked from the trunk to the maul. "Who sent you?" "Mr. Pettigrew at the freight office said you were needing help." "I was needing a man." Her mouth tightened, but she kept her chin steady. "Then, I suppose you are disappointed." He hated that he was. Hated it because the ranch was swallowing him alive, and because she stood there in the rain with no wagon behind her, no family at her side, and no proper way back to town before dark. The Ashford place had once been a proud thing. Whitewashed fence rails had run straight as scripture. The garden had produced beans enough to feed 3 families. His mother had kept red curtains in the kitchen window and lavender hanging from the rafters. Now the fence sagged in 2 places. The garden was half weeds, and the barn roof leaked over the oats. A stovepipe had slipped loose after the last wind. Laundry hung forgotten on the line, stiff with cold rain. The house smelled of dust, smoke, and rooms not open often enough. Adam Ashford had cattle on the slope, a mortgage note in the bank, a winter coming fast, and a 12-year-old nephew named Eli inside the house with a cough that would not leave. What he did not have was patience for another helpless mouth. Martha bent and pulled the maw free from the mud. The effort made her breath catch. She hit it badly. "Leave that," Adam said. "I said, I can work. I heard what you said, and I heard what you meant." His eyes narrowed. He was used to men backing away when he looked at them like that. Martha Granger only wiped rain from her cheek with the back of her wrist. "Before we go deeper into Martha and Adam's story, tell me where you are watching from tonight. If this quiet frontier tale touches your heart, like it, share it with someone who needs a gentle story, and subscribe so you can come back to the porch with us again." Adam took 3 steps closer and reached for the maul. Martha held on. For one strange second they stood that way, both gripping the same wet handle, the rain falling between them like a curtain. "You got somewhere to go?" he asked. She looked past him to the ranch house. The upstairs window had a crack shaped like lightning. Behind the kitchen glass, a child's pale face appeared, watched, then vanished. "No," she said. Adam loosened his grip first. "Then come inside before you drown standing up. I am not asking charity. I am not offering it." "What are you offering?" "Trial. 1 week. Bed in the pantry room. Meals if you cook them. Wages if you earn them." Her eyes lifted to his. Gray eyes, not soft exactly, but tired from staying brave too long. And if I don't earn them, then I take you back to town. I walked from town. Adam walked from town. Adam glanced at the muddy road behind her. 7 miles of ruts and stone, and she had come carrying that trunk as far as the south gate before dragging it the rest. He said nothing. He turned, picked up the trunk with one hand, and found it heavier than he expected. Martha reached for the tin pail herself. I can carry that, I know, he said, and the words came out rougher than kindness ought to sound. Inside, the house was warmer than the yard, but not by much. The kitchen stove held a dull bed of coals. A pot of coffee sat black and bitter on the back iron. The floor needed sweeping. A cracked plate rested on the table beside a heel of bread, gone hard at one edge. On a chair by the stove lay a boy's shirt with one sleeve torn open at the seam. Martha saw everything and said nothing. That was the first thing Adam noticed about her after the rain. She did not gasp, did not pity, did not fuss. Her eyes moved over the room the way a carpenter's hand moved over warped boards, measuring what could be fixed. Eli Ashford stood in the doorway with a wool blanket over his shoulders. He had Adam's dark hair and wary eyes, though the boys were softer, still waiting for the world to everything. You the new hen? Eli asked. Martha turned to him. I'm Martha Granger. She's here for a week, Adam said. Eli looked her over with a frankness only children and judges could get away with. You're small. So are nails, Martha said. Houses still need them. A corner of the boy's mouth moved before he remembered not to smile. Adam set the trunk down beside the pantry room door. Eli, go sit. You're wheezing. I'm not. You are. I fed the hens. In this rain, they were hollering. Adam's face hardened with worry and frustration, twin expressions he had never learned to separate. I told you to stay inside. Eli looked at the floor. They were hungry. Martha hung her shawl on a peg near the stove. Hungry creatures are poor listeners. The boy glanced at her again, uncertain whether she was taking his side. Adam was uncertain too. Martha went to the stove, lifted the coffee pot, sniffed, and quietly poured the contents into a basin. Adam stared. That coffee was still good. That coffee was tired of living. Eli made a small sound that might have been a laugh, then coughed until his narrow shoulders shook. Martha set the pot down and moved toward him. Adam stepped between them before he thought better of it. He doesn't need fussing. She stopped. No. He needs steamed dry stockings and something besides hard bread. Adam's ears burned. You've been here 5 minutes, and the boy has been cold longer than that. No one had spoken to him so plainly inside that kitchen since his mother died. Adam almost told her to leave the house. The words rose, sharp and ready. Then Eli coughed again, and the fight went out of him because he was right. Martha went to the pantry, opened the door, and found flour, onions, salt pork, beans, coffee, molasses, and 2 jars of peaches put up the summer before, by hands no longer there. She came back with an apron faded blue at the seams. I used this. It was my mother's, Adam said. Martha folded it over her arm with care. Then treated respectfully. That small answer struck him harder than any apology. He watched her tie the apron, roll up her sleeves, and begin. She did not transform the house that evening. Such things happen slower than stories usually admit. She built up the fire. She put water to boil. She sliced salt pork thin to stretch it, softened onions in the fat, made a pan of quick biscuits with hands that knew flour by feel, and set Eli near the steam with a blanket over his knees. When she found no clean towel, she washed one herself. When she discovered the lamp chimney black with soot, she cleaned it without comment. Adam brought in wood, feeling foolish each time he passed the chopping block outside. He had left her in the rain because his pride had looked at her body and decided what her worth must be. Now his kitchen smelled of biscuits and pork, and Eli was watching her as if she had performed a church miracle. At supper, Mara placed 3 plates on the table. Adam took his standing by the stove. She looked at him. Do ranchers not sit in their own houses? I got chores. You have stew. It can wait. Stew gets cold. Chores don't. Eli looked from one to the other, the spoon halfway to his mouth. Adam sat. The chair creaked under him. He could not remember the last time he had eaten at the table without hurrying. Marta bowed her head. A moment. Silent. Eli copied her. Adam did not. But he looked at his plate and felt something shift in the room. Not enough to name, only enough to unsettle him. The biscuits were small and plain, and the best thing he had eaten in weeks. Marta ate slowly, as if reminding herself not to appear hungry. Adam noticed that too. He also noticed she gave Eli the largest portion and herself the least. He reached for the pot and put another spoonful on her plate. Her eyes lifted. You worked, he said. She did not thank him. Somehow that pleased him. After supper, while Adam checked the horses, Marta washed dishes in water she had heated herself. Eli dried them badly but earnestly. She taught him set each plate on its edge so the water ran off, and he listened like instruction was a gift. You got children? He asked. The tin cup slipped in her hand, only a little. No, were you married? Eli, Adam warned from the doorway, rain dripping off his hat. Marta set the cup down. No, I was almost. The boy understood that more had been said than the words contained. He nodded as if almost was a country he had visited himself. That night, Marta slept in the pantry room on a narrow cot with a flour sack folded beneath the leg to keep it steady. Her trunk sat beneath the window. She opened it once before lying down. Inside were 2 dresses, a hairbrush with 3 teeth missing, a little Bible with a pressed blue flower between the pages, a packet of letters tied in black ribbon, and a folded man's workshirt batched so many times its original cloth was nearly gone. She touched the letters, but did not untie them. In the room across the hall, Adam sat awake with his boots still on, listening to the house make sounds it had not made in a long time. Water cooling in the kettle, dishes settling, Eli breathing easier in sleep, a woman moving softly behind a closed door. He did not like how much he noticed. Morning came pale and cold. Frost silvered the pump handle. Marta up before Adam, her hair braided tight, his mother's apron already tied over her dress. He found her in the yard scattering feed for the hens while Eli stood on the porch wrapped in a quilt, holding a tin cup of warm molasses water. You're supposed to be in bed, Adam told him. Marta said porch air ain't rain. Marta doesn't run this ranch. Marta tossed another handful of feed. No, but Marta can see when a boy is tired of staring at a ceiling. Adam looked at her. She looked back. The hens pecked between them, unconcerned with authority. He should have been angry. Instead, he saw that Alice's cheeks had more color than yesterday. The week began in labor. Marta learned the Ashford place by touching it. She learned which floorboard near the stove groaned, which hinge on the pantry cried out, which pump stroke brought clear water, and which brought rust. She learned that the bay mare, Juniper, liked her nose rubbed but hated sudden hands. She learned that the red hen laid in the broken feed box instead of the nesting shelf. She learned Adam took his coffee black. Eli liked his with milk when there was milk, and nobody had washed the kitchen curtains since spring. On the second day she took them down. Adam came in carrying a coil of rope and stopped as though she had removed a wall. What are you doing? Laundry. Those curtains don't need washing. They are gray. They were always gray. She held up a wet corner. Beneath the dirt, faded red cloth showed. No, they were waiting. He frowned at the basin. That water came from the pump. It usually does. You hauled all that yourself? Yes. You should have asked. You were mending fence. You could have waited. She wrung out the cloth. For permission or water. Eli, sitting at the table with a slate, hid his smile. Adam left before he said something unwise. Outside, He drove nails into a loose fence rail harder than needed. Each hammer blow jarred his injured leg. He had broken it 2 years earlier when a half-wild gelding threw him against the corral gate. The same winter his brother Thomas died of lung fever and left Eli behind. Adam had buried Thomas in frozen ground, then his mother 3 months later, then every gentle part of himself he could not afford to keep. Since then, he had run the ranch like a man holding a door shut against a blizzard. But doors cracked. By the 4th day, the kitchen curtains were red again. Not bright, not new, but red enough to catch the morning sun. The stovepipe was set straight after Mara handed Adam tools without being asked. The hens had fresh straw. Ida's torn shirt was mended with neat small stitches. A shelf in the pantry held beans in sacks tied cleanly instead of slumping open. There was coffee kept warm under a cloth when Adam came in from checking cattle before dawn. He did not thank her every time. He did not know how to thank without sounding like he needed. But he stopped telling her not to lift things. One afternoon, the sky cleared blue and cold. Adam found Marta in the garden, pulling dead vines and turning soil with a short-handled fork. She had tied her skirt up away from the mud. Loose curls clung to the back of her neck. The work was too hard for her, but she did it in steady measure. Dig, breathe, clear, stack. That garden's done for the year, he said. She did not stop. A garden is never done. It is either feeding or preparing. We got cattle, not roses. I was thinking onions, beans, my best sage near the porch. Ground freezes early here. Then I best hurry. He leaned on the gate. One hinge sagged. He made a note in his mind, then resented that the note had come because she made the gate worth seeing. You always answer a man like that? He asked. She struck the fork into the soil. Only when he talks like I was hired to agree instead of work? A laugh almost escaped him. It felt strange in his chest, like a rusty latch moving. She looked up at the sound he did not make. For a moment there was only the wind combing through dry grass beyond the fence and the far clank of a loose barn chain. Then Adam said, "Where'd you learn garden work?" "My aunt kept a boarding house in Boise City. Folks think boarding houses are beds and biscuits. They are mostly repairs no one sees. And before that," she brushed dirt from her fingers, "before that, I belonged to people who thought feeding me was generosity, and taking my wages was discipline." His expression changed. "Not pity, something darker. Family, some call it that." She began again, ending the talk. Adam had questions, but the line of her shoulders told him they would cost more than he had earned. That evening he fixed the garden gate. Marta saw it in the morning. He watched from the barn while she opened and closed it twice, just to feel it swing clean. She said nothing about it, but at breakfast his coffee had a spoonful of molasses stirred in, the way his mother used to take hers when the morning was bitter. "I don't sweeten coffee," he said. "I know." He drank it anyway. The trial week ended on a Sunday. The church bell from town could not be heard from the Ashford place, but Marta washed Eli's hair, brushed his coat, and told Adam the boy needed to sit among people before he forgot he belonged to the world. Adam hitched the wagon with visible reluctance. "I don't owe much," he said. "I gathered that. Town talks, towns breathe. Talking is how they prove it. They won't be kind." Marta buttoned Eli's coat. "Then we needn't be impressed." Eli looked up at Adam. "Can we go?" Adam wanted to refuse for the boy's sake. Then he realized refusal would be for his own. They rode into town beneath a hard blue sky. Idaho City sat tucked between pine slopes and rough tracks, its storefronts weathered by gold rush hopes that had thinned but not vanished. The mercantile windows held bolts of cloth, coffee tins, lamp oil, and the thousand small temptations of people who counted coins before dreams. Men in hats paused along the boardwalk when Adam Ashford drove in. Women looked from Marta's patched dress to the boy at her side. Marta felt their eyes. Adam saw her feel them. She did not lower her head. Inside the mercantile, Mr. Abner Sloat stood behind the counter with his tomes hooked in his vest. He had a narrow face and a voice smooth with other people's debts. "Well, now," he said. "Mr. Ashford, been some time." Adam set coffee, nails, lamp wicks, and calico thread on the counter. "Put it on my account." Sloat's eyes slid to Martha. "Account's a delicate word these days." Adam's jaw moved. Martha examined a tin of baking powder as though she had not heard. Sloat leaned closer, lowering his voice just enough to make sure everyone strained to listen. "Banker came through yesterday. Mr. Harlan says your note comes due at month's end. Hard season to be hiring household company." Martha set the tin down. Adam's hand closed into a fist on the counter. "She's not company." "No?" Town was wondering. Woman walking alone to a bachelor ranch. Folks make stories from less. Eli went still. Martha turned. Her face had gone pale, but her voice was level. "Then folks must be very poor in imagination." Sloat blinked. Adam looked at her. She continued, "I was hired to work. If labor has become scandalous in Idaho City, perhaps you should close your store, Mr. Sloat. I see plenty of women carrying your flour, and none of them being called company for it." A silence fell sharp enough to cut cloth. Someone near the door coughed to hide amusement. Sloat's face reddened. "I meant no offense." "That is fortunate," Martha said. "Since you gave none, I am obliged to accept." Adam paid with the last few coins in his pocket for the items he could not wait on, took the rest off the counter, and walked out with Martha and Eli beside him. "At the wagon," he said, "you didn't have to do that." "Do you what?" "Stand there while he aimed at you to wound me." She climbed onto the wagon seat. He aimed at all three of us. Adam handed Eli up, then stood holding the side rail. The town women were still watching. He turned, loud enough for nearby ears. "Martha Granger works at my ranch. She eats at my table. Anybody with questions can bring them to me instead of whispering over flour barrels." Martha's eyes widened a fraction. Adam climbed up and took the reins. His face looked carved from stone, but his ears were red. On the ride home, Eli sat between them, quiet for a long while. Then he said, "You talked like Aunt Ruth." Adam's hands tightened on the reins. Martha asked gently, "Who is Aunt Ruth?" "My ma," Eli said. The wagon wheels rode over dry ruts. Adam looked toward the pines, not at the boy. "She used to tell storemen where to step," Eli added. "Pa said she could shame a mule into manners." Martha smiled softly. "She sounds like a woman worth remembering." Eli leaned against her sleeve just briefly, then straightened as if embarrassed by needing comfort. Adam saw it, the small lean, the trust of it. That night, after Eli slept, Adam found Martha on the porch with her Bible in her lap and a lantern at her feet. The cold had sharpened the stars. From the barn came the low breath of horses and the soft stamp of hooves. "You cold?" he asked. "A little." He brought his coat from the peg and set it beside her, not over her shoulders. A choice, not a claim. She looked at it. Then she pulled it around herself. He sat on the far end of the bench. For a while they listened to the night. "You said you were almost married," he said. Martha kept her eyes on the dark yard. "Yes. You don't have to tell it." "No, I don't." The lantern flame moved in the glass. "But I carried it here," she said at last. "Maybe I'm tired of carrying it alone." Adam did not move. "There was a man named Calvin Price. He clerked for a land attorney in Boise City. He liked clean gloves and fine words. He liked me better when I was useful and quiet. My aunt died and left debts. Calvin said he would marry me if I signed over what little claim money came from her estate. Said it was proper. Said a wife's security rested in her husband's judgment." Her fingers tightened on the Bible cover. "The day before the wedding, I found he had already promised that money to a gambling creditor. When I refused, he told everyone I was unstable, ungrateful, hard to manage. He said no decent man would take a sharp-tongued woman with no family and no dowry." Adam's voice was low. "Did he strike you?" "No." She looked down at her hands. He did worse in the way cowards do. He made people doubt my word. Adam understood that kind of cruelty. A bruise could be shown. A stolen name had to be lived with. The letters, he asked before he could stop himself. She turned. I saw the ribbon in your trunk. I wasn't spying. Door was open. She looked back toward the yard. Letters from women who worked at my aunt's boarding house. Calvin cheated 2 of them before me. I keep the letters in case he tries to become respectable somewhere else. You could use them. I could, but you haven't. She gave a small, tired smile. Strength is not always swinging the blade the first day you pick it up. The words settled between them. Adam looked at his own hands, scarred and knotted from rope burns, splinters, winter work. Hands that had held his brother's coffin rope. Hands that had pushed Eli away more often than they held him, because holding reminded him what could be lost. My brother Thomas died in that front room, he said. Martha turned to him, silent. Lung fever. His wife Ruth went 6 months before with childbed fever, after a baby that never breathed. Eli was 10. Ma took sick nursing Thomas and never got strong again. I kept thinking if I worked hard enough, if I kept the cattle fed and the notes paid and the house standing, I could stop anything else from leaving. His throat moved. But the house left anyway, Martha said softly. He looked at her then. She did not apologize for understanding. He said, I don't know how to knee people without resenting them for it. That must be lonely. It's safe. No, she said. It is only quiet, he almost answered. Instead, he sat with the truth of it until the lantern burned low. The next morning, Adam told Martha the week was done. She stood by the stove with flour on one cheek. Eli froze at the table. Martha's hands went still in the biscuit dough. I know I can pay half wages now. Rest after the cattle sale. Her expression changed slowly. You're asking me to stay? I'm telling you the terms if you choose to. Eli blurted. Stay. Adam looked at him. Eli stared hard at his slate. Martha wiped her hands on the apron. I'll stay through winter if the wages are honest and the pantry room remains mine. It does. And if I say the stove needs fixing, you fix it before smoke kills us all. Adam nodded. And Eli studies after breakfast and rests when he coughs. I'm standing here, Eli muttered. You are also coughing, Martha said. Adam looked at the boy. She has a point, Eli groaned. But it was the sound of a child who felt safe enough to complain. So Martha Ranger stayed. The ranch began to change in ways too small for a ledger. A clean rag hung by the pump. The woodpile grew straight because Martha stacked the split pieces bark side up to shed rain. And Adam, after criticizing once, began doing it her way. A cracked window pane was patched with oiled paper until glass could be bought. The barn aisle was swept. Harness pegs were labeled with chalk because Eli kept mixing lead ropes. The laundry came in smelling of wind instead of mildew. A jar of dried apple slices appeared on the shelf for winter. The garden rose, though empty, lay tucked beneath straw as if promised something. Martha changed too, though not as easily seen. Her cheeks filled some. Her hands hardened. She still moved carefully when tired, but she stopped hiding every tremble. One afternoon, Adam saw her sit on the porch steps with a cup of water before the work was done. He considered that a victory. Adam changed worst of all because he knew it was happening. He began bringing in extra kindling without being asked. He set aside smaller logs for Martha and Eli. He checked the pantry roof after hard rain because her room sat below it. When he rode to the upper pasture, he told her when he expected to return. The first time he did it, she looked startled. Just so you know, he said, I know how to be alone. I didn't say you didn't. No, she said, and her voice softened. You didn't. Eli grew bolder under her care. He followed Adam to the corral, learning knots and feed measures. He followed Martha through the house, learning fractions from flour cups and geography from labels on coffee sacks. On mild days, he carried eggs in his hat from the henhouse and delivered them like treasure. One morning, a roan gelding kicked a loose board in the corral fence. Adam cursed under his breath and grabbed a hammer. Before he reached the gate, Marta was already there, pressing the board back with her shoulder while the horse snorted. "Move!" Adam snapped. "Nail," she said. "That horse'll crush you. He'll crush the rail first." "Nail." The gelding tossed his head. Marta stood firm, boots sliding in mud, jaw tight with effort. Adam drove the nail, then another. Then he caught her by the elbow and pulled her clear just as the horse slammed the fence. "Are you trying to get killed?" he demanded. She yanked her arm back. "I was trying to hold a board. That is not your work. Then fix your fence before it becomes mine." He stared at her, breathing hard. The fear in him had come out as anger. He saw that too late. She saw it at once. Her voice lowered. "Don't shout because I frightened you. That struck clean." Adam looked away. His hands still remembered the narrowness of her elbow. "I'm sorry," he said. Marta blinked. It might have been the first plain apology she had heard from a man in years. She did not make it easy on him, for shouting or for assuming. He swallowed. "Both," she nodded once, accepted that evening. He repaired the entire corral fence by lantern light. Marta brought coffee to the barn and set it on an upturned bucket near him. "You'll ruin your eyes," she said. "Fence needs doing." "It needed doing before I scolded you." "Yes." She waited. Adam drove another nail. "I don't like being wrong." "No one does. I especially don't," I had noticed. He looked at her then and saw the smallest smile on her mouth. It changed her face from merely plain and tired to something alive and quietly beautiful. Not the kind of beauty men shouted about from saloon doors. The kind a house learned first. The sight of her bending over bread dough in morning light, or standing in a doorway with her sleeves rolled, or listening to a child as if his small worries mattered. The thought unsettled him so badly he bent another nail. Marta laughed softly. It was not a big laugh. It was no more than a breath warmed by amusement. But Adam carried it with him for days. Outside pressure returned in the form of Mr. Silas Harlan, banker, who arrived 2 weeks before the note came due, wearing polished boots and a fur-collared coat unsuitable for mud. He drove a hired buggy into the yard and looked at the Ashford place with the expression of a man measuring another man's failure. Adam met him by the porch. Marta was inside kneading bread. Eli watched from behind the curtain. "Afternoon, Ashford," Harlan said. "Mr. Harlan, place looks tidier." Adam said nothing. Harlan's gaze moved to the red curtains. "Domestic help, I hear." Adam's face closed. Marta, hearing the tone, wiped flour from her hands and came to the doorway. Harlan tipped his hat. "Miss Granger, or is it Mrs. something?" "Marta Granger. Aye, capable woman, they say." "They say many things," she replied. Harlan smiled without warmth. "Indeed. I trust Mr. Ashford has explained his position. The bank cannot indulge sentiment. The balance is due October 31st. If he cannot pay, the lower meadow and water rights will be reconsidered." Adam's body went still. Marta looked at him. "Water rights?" Harlan raised his brows. "He had not told you? A ranch without water is a saddle without a horse." Adam said, "That's enough, is it? I have a buyer interested. Fair offer. You could keep the house, perhaps, and a few acres. Less strain on a man already overburdened." Eli coughed behind the curtain. Harlan glanced toward the sound. "A boy needs stability." Adam took one step forward. "Do not speak of my boy." Marta moved onto the porch, not between them, but near enough that Adam felt the restraint of her presence. "When is the cattle sale?" she asked. Harlan looked amused. 5 days after the note. That seems inconvenient. Debt rarely arranges itself for comfort. Marta's eyes cooled. "No, but men often do." Harlan's smile thinned. He tipped his hat again and left, wheels cutting neat tracks through the mud. When the buggy was gone, Adam turned away. "You should have told me," Marta said. "It's my debt," It is the ranch's debt, Myrosh. Then why am I here? He faced her. Because I hired you to cook while you drown quietly. His expression hardened. Careful, no daughter. You be careful. Pride is expensive, Adam. It was the first time she had used his given name. Both of them heard it. He looked toward the lower meadow, where brown grass bent in the wind and the creek flashed silver through cottonwoods. Without that water, the cattle could not winter. Without the cattle, there would be no ranch. Without the ranch, he did not know what remained of his family but graves and a boy with nowhere to belong. I can handle Harlan, he said. How? He had no answer. Marta turned and went back inside. A moment later, he heard dough struck harder than necessary against the table. That night, she opened her trunk and untied the black ribbon around the letters. Adam saw the lamplight beneath her door long after midnight. In the days that followed, Marta became quieter. Not cold, exactly, but inward. She counted jars in the pantry, counted coins in a tin box Adam had given her for household money, counted sacks of grain and pounds of flour. She asked Eli about his mother's kin and learned there were none near enough to help. She asked Adam which cattle were ready for sale and which could not be driven hard. He answered some questions and avoided others. On the third night, snow began in the high ridges, though rain fell in the yard. The stove smoked again. Adam cursed the pipe and climbed to the roof in the dark, despite the slick shingles. Marta stood below with a lantern, face upturned, rain striking her cheeks. Come down, she called. You'll break your neck. Pipe's loose. It can wait until morning. Smoke can't. Adam Ashford, if you fall, I cannot carry you. He looked down, rain dripping from his hat. I thought you were stronger than you look. Her face changed, and he regretted the jest before it finished leaving him. He climbed down carefully. When his boots hit the ground, she shoved the lantern at him. Do not turn my own words against me because you are too stubborn to be afraid. He held the lantern, chastened. I was joking. I wasn't when I said it. The rain fell between them. I know, he said quietly. Her anger softened, then exhausted itself. She pressed one hand to her forehead. I have been told all my life what I could not hold, could not lift, could not understand, could not endure. I am tired, Adam. I am tired down to the bone of having to prove I am not made of paper. He set the lantern on the chopping block. I don't think you're made of paper. No. You think I'm made of something breakable just the same. His answer came slowly. Maybe. I think everyone is. She looked at him then and saw the truth he had not meant to show. The rain tapped on the lantern hood. The old house stood behind them, smoking and lit from within, wounded but occupied. Marta wrapped her arms around herself. That might be the saddest thing you've said. Adam took off his hat and held it at his side. Rain darkened his hair. I don't know how to stop. She wanted to touch his face. The wanting frightened her more than the cold. So she picked up the lantern. Then start with the stovepipe. In the morning, he fixed it properly. The midpoint came on a market day when Marta almost left. Adam rode to town early to speak with cattle buyers, leaving Marta and Eli to wash laundry, gather eggs, and patch a tear in the barn tarp. Near noon, a rider came to the gate. He wore a gray city coat beneath a trail cloak and sat his horse badly but confidently. Marta knew him before he dismounted. Calvin Price. She was at the pump with a wet sheet twisted in her hands. Water ran over her wrists and dripped from her elbows. For a moment she could not move. He smiled as if they had parted over tea. Marta, Eli came out of the barn carrying a forkful of straw. Who's that? No one, Marta said too quickly. Calvin removed his gloves finger by finger. That is unkind. I travel a long way. What do you want? To correct a mistake? You have made several. Which one? His smile tightened. You always did sharpen your tongue when frightened. Eli stepped closer to Marta. Calvin noticed the boy and softened his voice into performance. I have come to offer Miss Granger a respectable way out of a questionable situation. Martha's hands clenched around the wet sheet. You will leave this property, she said. I will with you. People are talking in town. You cannot remain here without damage to your name. My name survived you, barely. He came nearer. I know about Ashford's debt. I know about the bank. This ranch will not hold. When it falls, what becomes of you? A woman alone again, but older, poorer, and carrying worse gossip. Eli said, Mr. Adam won't lose the ranch. Calvin looked at him with false pity. Children should not be fed fairy tales. Martha moved between them. Do not speak to him. There, that is the tone I remember. Calvin lowered his voice. I still have influence. Come with me, marry me quietly, and I can tell Boise's society you suffered a nervous spell after your aunt's death. People forgive weakness in women far more easily than defiance. Martha laughed once, without joy. You haven't changed at all. No, I have improved. I am now a partner in the land office. I could help Ashford, perhaps. There are buyers for water rights. Papers can be adjusted. Debts delayed. His eyes held hers. If you are grateful. The shame of it burned her face, not because she believed him, but because he had come to Adam's yard and spoken as if she could be traded for mercy. Eli dropped the pitchfork and ran toward the road. Eli, Martha called. I'm getting Mr. Adam. Calvin reached as if to stop him. Martha slapped his hand away. He stared at her. Careful. No, she said. Her voice shook, but it held. You be careful. Calvin stepped close enough that she smelled travel dust and expensive soap. You think this rancher will choose you when the bank comes? Men like Ashford choose land, blood, name, not women with trunks full of trouble. Martha's eyes flicked toward the house. Her trunk sat in the pantry room. Her letters, her past, her small claim money hidden in the Bible lining. Enough might be to help Adam with Harlan, enough to make Calvin dangerous if he guessed. Calvin smiled. Pack your things. When Adam rode in 20 minutes later with Eli clinging behind the saddle, Martha had already packed. Her trunk stood by the porch. The laundry hung half-pinned, snapping in the wind. Calvin waited near his horse with smug patience. Adam dismounted before the horse had fully stopped. What is this? Calvin stepped forward. Adam Ashford, I presume. Calvin Price, I have come to retrieve my intended. Martha went pale. I am not. Adam did not look at Calvin. He looked at the trunk. Martha, she could not bear the hurt in his voice, mostly because he tried so hard to hide it. I should go, she said. Eli cried. No, Adam took one step toward her. Did he threaten you? No, Calvin said. I offered sense. Adam's eyes turned on him then. The yard seemed to still. Martha, Adam said. Look at me. She did, unwillingly. If you want to leave, I'll hitch the wagon myself and take you anywhere you choose. But you won't go because a man came into my yard and shamed you into running. Her eyes filled despite her effort. You don't understand. Then tell me. I bring trouble. I noticed. That startled her. He walked to the trunk, picked it up, and set it back inside the doorway. Calvin's face darkened. You overstep? Adam came down the steps. No. You did that at the gate. I have legal matters with Miss Granger. Then write a letter. She is unstable. Ask anyone in Boise who knew. Adam crossed the space so fast, Calvin backed into his horse. She is under my protection as long as she wants it, Adam said, each word quiet and dangerous. Not because she is weak, because this is my land, and you will not insult a woman on it. Martha stood frozen, one hand pressed to the porch post. Calvin sneered. Protection? Is that what you call it? Adam's voice rose enough for the hills to hear. I call her Martha Granger, the woman who fed my boy, mended my house, stood up in town when you would have hidden behind whispers, and has more honor in her patched gloves than you have in that whole polished coat. Calvin's mouth opened. Adam stepped closer. Right. For a moment it seemed Calvin might argue. Then he saw Eli holding a shovel with both hands, saw Martha standing straighter now, saw Adam Ashford's fists loose and ready at his sides. Calvin mounted with ugly haste. "This is not finished," Martha spoke then. "Yes, Calvin, it is." He looked back at her. She reached into her apron pocket and drew out the black ribbon packet. "I have the letters, all of them. If you use my name again, if you trouble Mr. Ashford, if you cheat another woman, they go to every judge, banker, church elder, and newspaper from Boise City to Silver City." Calvin's face emptied of color. Martha's hands shook, but her voice did not. "I am stronger than I look. You should have believed me the first time." He rode out without another word. The yard remained silent after him. Wind moved through the laundry, snapping white sheets like flags of surrender or victory. Eli dropped the shovel and ran to Martha. He stopped short, not sure if he was too old to cling. She opened one arm, and he came into it. Adam looked at them both, and something in his chest broke in a way that did not feel like ruin. Later, after Eli had gone inside, Adam found Martha by the woodpile. She was standing where he had first seen her, the maul stuck upright in the chopping block. "I was going to leave the money," she said. "What money?" She closed her eyes a moment. "My aunt left a small claim settlement, not much, hidden in my Bible. I thought if I left it on your desk, it might buy time with Harlan." Adam felt the ground shift. "You packed to leave and give me your money." "I thought it would be easier." "For who?" She had no answer. He came closer, slow. "Mara, I don't want your money. If losing it means you walk out of this house thinking you were only worth what you could pay." Her mouth trembled. She pressed it still. "I don't know how to stay when I might become a burden," she whispered. He looked toward the house. The red curtains glowed faintly in the window. Ali's slate lay on the porch rail. The hens scratched near the pump. The garden gate swung clean on its hinges. "You became part of the place," Adam said. "That is not the same thing." It was not a grand speech. It was better. It was a man speaking plain because plain was all he trusted. Martha looked at him through tears she refused to let fall. "Ask me to stay then." His face changed. "Stay," he said. She waited. "Please." The word cost him. She heard that. She honored it by nodding once. "All right." He did not touch her. Not then. He only picked up the maul, set a round of wood on the block, and split it clean. Then he handed her the smaller pieces to stack. They worked side by side until the woodpile stood ready for winter. But Calvin Price had not been wrong about one thing. Trouble was not finished. On October 31st, Harlan returned with the sheriff and papers folded in his coat. Snow dusted the roofs that morning. The cattle sale was still 5 days away, delayed by a washed-out bridge on the South Road. Adam had ridden hard to find buyers and come back with promises, but no cash. He had sold 2 saddle horses, a silver watch that had belonged to his father, and nearly all the stored hides. Still, the amount fell short. Martha had offered her claim money once more. Adam had refused once more. By noon, Harlan stood in the kitchen because Adam would not let him speak business over the threshold like a funeral caller. The sheriff, Jonah Bell, was an older man with tired eyes and a tobacco-stained mustache. He looked unhappy to be there. "I don't like it, Adam," Jonah said, "but law is law." Harlan placed the note on the table. "The bank will take possession of the lower meadow and associated water access unless payment is made by sundown." Eli stood near the stove, white-faced. Martha held a dish towel in both hands. Adam looked as if each breath had to be forced through stone. "I can pay the balance after the sale. The bank is not interested in hopes," Harlan said. "No," Martha said quietly. "Only opportunities." Harlan turned. "Miss Granger." She laid the towel down. "You said there was a buyer interested." "Who?" "That is bank business. Land transfers are recorded." His gaze sharpened. Martha walked to the shelf and took down the packet of letters. Not Calvin's letters, other letters now, written over the past week. She had sent Eli to town with notes for the freight office, the land office, and a widow named Mrs. Emmeline Ward who had once worked with her aunt. She had waited for replies and said nothing because strength, she had learned. Sometimes, men preparing while men mistook silence for surrender. The buyer is Calvin Price, she said. Adam stared. Harlan's mouth tightened. You have been misinformed? No, I have been informed in writing. Mr. Price formed a partnership last spring with a land speculator, using your bank as agent. He came here before the note was due and suggested papers could be adjusted. That sounds less like business and more like collusion to force a sale. Jonah Bell's brows drew together. Silas, Harlan's face flushed. This is absurd. Martha placed another paper on the table. I also have statements from 3 women he defrauded under land and marriage promises. If the bank attaches itself to him, I expect those statements will interest a judge. Adam looked at Martha as if he had never truly seen the full size of her. Harlan tried to recover. Even if unpleasant associations exist, the debt remains. Yes, Martha said. Debt remains. So does payment. She turned and went to the pantry room. Adam followed her to the doorway. Martha, he said. Lo, no. She took her Bible from the trunk. No, he repeated. She opened the lining at the back with careful fingers and drew out a flat envelope. This money was nearly used to buy my silence once. I would rather use it to buy something honest. I told you I won't take it. You are not taking it from me. I am placing it where I choose. For my land, for Eli's water, for the hens and the garden and the mare who hates sudden hands, for the kitchen curtains your mother chose, for the pantry room that is mine, because we agreed it was, for a home I have worked in with both hands. His eyes shone with anger and pain. I can't pay you back if the sale goes poor. I did not ask whether you could. That's exactly why I can't. She stepped closer. Adam, look at me. He did. I have spent too long letting men decide what my strength is allowed to mean. Do not make yourself another one. The words struck him still. In the kitchen, Harlan cleared his throat impatiently. Adam stood between Martha and the room, fighting the hardest battle pride ever gave him. To take help felt like failing. To refuse her choice would be another kind of betrayal. At last he stepped aside. Martha returned to the table and counted the bills with steady fingers. Not enough for wealth, enough for time, enough for water, enough, with Adam's coins and the horse money, to meet the balance. Harlan had no graceful way to refuse cash in front of the sheriff. His hand shook when he wrote the receipt. Martha took it before Adam could read every line, then passed it to Jonah Bell. Would you witness that the note is satisfied? Jonah's mustache twitched. Gladly. Harlan left with his papers diminished and his dignity worse. At the door, Adam said, Mr. Harlan. The banker turned. Adam held up the receipt. You'll tell Calvin Price the water isn't for sale. Harlan's eyes flicked to Martha. I suspect he will know. After they were gone, the kitchen seemed too quiet. Eli looked at Martha. Are we poor now? She let out a small laugh that almost broke. We were poor this morning. He considered that. Are we poor? Adam knelt in front of him, something he had not done in a long while. We still have the ranch, and Martha. Adam looked at her. I shall stay, he said. Martha pressed one hand to the back of a chair. Eli nodded solemnly. Then we ain't poorer. That was when Martha cried. Not loudly, not with drama. She turned toward the stove as if checking the fire and wept with one hand over her mouth. Eli went to her first, then hesitated. Adam came next. He did not know what to do with a woman's tears that were not asking to be hidden. So he put his hand on the chair beside hers. She looked down at it. After a moment, she set her fingers over his. Neither moved away. Winter came down fast after that. The cattle sale brought enough to restock flour, pay Martha the wages still owed, and put a little aside, though not enough for ease. Adam paid her in full on a cold evening with snow ticking against the window. She counted the money, then gave back half. His face darkened. Maria, for sea glass and Eli's boots, your wages, my investment, in what? She looked around the kitchen, the red curtains, the mended chairs, the polished stove, the boy reading by lamplight, the coffee steaming on the table, Adam standing with his stubborn hurt and softer eyes. In spring, she said. He had no argument against spring. Snow made the ranch smaller. Chores became more urgent, not fewer. Adam broke ice at the trough each morning. Marta banked the stove at night and kept a pot of beans warm for whoever came in cold. Eli grew stronger, but still coughed when the air bit hard. He learned to wrap his scarf over his mouth before going to the barn, because Marta looked at him until he did. The woodpile shrank, the barn roof held. The repaired fence stood against drifts. Laundry dried on lines strung near the stove. Hens complained in the cold and laid just enough eggs to seem proud of themselves. Juniper the mare foaled early in March during a sleet storm, and Marta stayed in the barn beside Adam with straw in her hair and lantern smoke in her throat until the trembling little colt found his legs. You should go inside, Adam said for the 5th time. Marta rubbed the foal's damp neck with a sack. So should you. I'm needed. So am I. He looked at her across the straw. Yes, he said. You are. The words were simple. They reached places in her that praise never had. By April, the creek broke free of ice. The garden took seed. Marta planted onions, beans, sage, and a row of marigolds she claimed were practical for keeping pests away. Adam pretended to believe her. Eli carved crooked markers for each row and misspelled marigolds so badly Marta kept the marker forever. Town changed slowly too. News of Calvin Price spread the way bad weather did, first as rumor, then as fact. The letters reached the right hands after Calvin tried to deny knowing Marta. Women began speaking. A judge in Boise City opened inquiry into fraudulent land claims. Mr. Holland grew polite enough to taste sour. Mr. Sloat at the Mercantile called Marta Miss Granger, with a caution that gave Eli deep satisfaction. One Sunday after service, Mrs. Abigail Pike, who had once looked Marta up and down like a stain on good linen, approached her near the church steps. I fear I misjudged you, Mrs. Pike said stiffly. Marta held a basket of eggs for the pastor's wife. People often do until it becomes inconvenient. The older woman blinked, then nodded. Sir, eyes. Well, I am sorry. Marta accepted the apology because it was heavy for the woman to carry and cost Marta nothing to receive. Adam watched from beside the wagon. Later, on the ride home, he said, You were kinder than I might have been. You once told me I'd hurt myself chopping wood. I was wrong, I says. But I stayed. So you did. The wagon rolled past new grass, brightening along the road. After a while, Marta said, Why have you never asked me to court you? Adam nearly dropped the reins. Eli, sitting in the wagon bed, suddenly became fascinated with a sack of feed. Adam stared ahead. Didn't know you were waiting on the question. I wasn't. I was wondering whether you were avoiding it. That is worse, usually. The horses plodded on. Adam's face was red above his collar. Marta Granger, would you allow me to come calling? She looked around at the wagon, the boy pretending deafness, the man beside her, and the mountains wearing spring light. You already know where I live, she said. Eli snorted from the back. Adam gave him a warning glance, then looked at Marta. I mean proper. She softened. Then, yes, Adam, properly. His first proper call took place that evening on the porch of his own house, because no one could think of a better arrangement. Eli insisted on sitting in the kitchen with the window cracked open as chaperone, though he fell asleep over his reader within 10 minutes. Adam wore a clean shirt. Marta wore her best dress, The brown one with the collar she had turned twice to hide where. He brought her a bunch of wild bluebells from near the creek, roots and dirt still attached, because he had not known whether cut flowers were practical. She planted them by the porch the next morning. Their courtship was not made of moonlit speeches. It was made of a second cup of coffee poured before the first was requested. It was made of Adam learning not to take the heaviest buckets simply because it was heavy, but to ask, "Do you want help?" It was made of Martha sometimes saying yes. It was made of Eli rolling his eyes when Adam shaved twice in 1 week. It was made of a new pane of glass in the pantry room window, and a shelf Adam built for Martha's Bible, letters, and hairbrush with 3 missing teeth. One night in May, thunder rolled behind the mountains. Martha stood in the kitchen, counting jars, when Adam came in from the barn, carrying a small wooden box. He set it on the table. "What's that?" "My mother's." Inside lay a ring, plain gold, thin from years of wear. Not grand, not new, loved. Martha's breath caught. Adam kept his hand on the box lid as if anchoring himself. "I don't have pretty words." "I know." His mouth twitched, then steadied. "I had this notion that if I didn't ask more from life, life couldn't take more from me." Martha's eyes filled. "But it took anyway," he said. "Then you came here with a trunk, a dented pail, and a way of looking at broken things like they were not finished. You made my house a home before I had courage to call it one." She pressed her fingers to her lips. "I need you, Martha. More than I knew a man could need someone and still stand upright. Not to cook, not to mend, not to save this ranch. I need you because when you are here, I remember I am not only surviving." The thunder moved closer. Rain began soft against the windows. He opened the box fully. "Will you marry me?" Martha looked at the ring, then at the man. Her first thought was not of Calvin or shame, or all the rooms where she had once felt unwanted. Her first thought was of the woodpile in rain, and the way Adam had let go of the maul first. "Yes," she said. Adam closed his eyes for one breath. Then Eli burst from the hall, where he had absolutely been listening. "Can I say something now?" Martin laughed through tears. "Yeah." The boy ran to them and threw his arms around both, awkward and fierce. "Good," he said into Adam's shirt, "because I already told Juniper." They married in June beneath a sky washed clean by morning rain. It was not a grand wedding. Mrs. Pike helped with flowers. Mr. Sloat sent sugar at half price and pretended it was not apology. Sheriff Bell stood with Adam. Eli carried the ring in a small leather pouch and checked 6 times to make sure it had not vanished. Martha wore a dress she had sewn herself from blue calico, bought with her own wages. At her throat was a small pressed flower from her Bible, tucked into a locket Adam had traded 2 calves to buy. Her hands shook when she took his, but not from fear. The pastor spoke of patience, kindness, and covenant. Adam listened as if each word were a fence post he meant to set deep. Martha listened as if she had crossed a desert to hear her name spoken without doubt. When asked if he would take her, Adam said, "I will," with a steadiness that made Eli cry and deny it afterward. When asked if she would take him, Martha looked at Adam Ashford, stubborn rancher, wounded man, keeper of grief, builder of gates, learner of apologies. "I will," she said, and she did. The Ashford Ranch did not become easy after that. The frontier rarely rewards love by removing work. There were still storms that tore shingles loose, still calves lost, still money counted twice and spent once, still nights when Adam woke from dreams of frozen graves, and Martha laid a hand on his shoulder without asking him to speak. Still days when Martha heard some old whisper inside her say she was too little, too sharp, too much trouble, and Adam set a cup of coffee beside her with molasses stirred in, because he remembered bitterness needed answering. But the house was no longer quiet in the old way. The kitchen smelled of bread more often than smoke. Clean curtains moved in the window. The water pump had a new handle. The corral gate latched true. The barn roof held through rain. Hens strutted as if responsible for prosperity. The garden grew beans up poles, onions in straight rows, sage near the porch, and marigolds bright as little suns. The woodpile stood high before winter. Laundry snapped white on the line. Alice's cough faded with warm food, dry socks, and the stubborn care of two adults who watched him without smothering him. In late summer, Adam built Martha a proper bench by the garden, not because she asked, because he had learned that strong people still deserved places to rest. She sat there one evening shelling peas into a blue bowl while Eli read aloud from the porch, and Adam repaired a bridle on the step. The sun lowered behind the Idaho ridges, laying gold across the yard. Coffee waited warm on the stove. A pie cooled beneath a cloth. The repaired fence threw long, straight shadows over the pasture. In the pantry room, now kept as Martha's sewing room, her old trunk sat open not like a thing ready to leave, but like a chest that had finally unpacked its sorrow. Adam looked up from the bridle and watched his wife scold a hen out of the garden, with all the dignity of a queen defending her borders. Martha caught him staring. What? He shook his head. Nothing. She narrowed her eyes. Adam, he smiled a little, just thinking you're stronger than you look. She held his gaze, and the old words returned without pain. No, she said softly. You see me better now. Eli kept reading, stumbling over a long word and trying again. The hen escaped under the fence. The mountains held the last light. And on that porch, in that mended home, no one was saved by being made less than they were. They were saved by being seen, by being needed, and by staying when staying became an act of love. Some say the Ashford Ranch prospered because the cattle found good grass and the creek ran steady. Some say it was because Adam became less proud and Martha became less afraid of rest. But those who knew the place best said you could tell the truth of it by the porch at supper time. 3 plates on the table, red curtains in the window, bluebells blooming by the step, and a man who never again mistook quiet strength for weakness.